Joining us right now from the Birmingham Maple Clinic is Carrie Kraweic. And Carrie, thank you very much for joining us this morning right here on the Megacast.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into your area of expertise and why we have you, do you have you heard that dish, the tomato pudding thing in my family. Do you have something in your family or something you like to prepare special for the holidays?
Do you know one thing my mom brings to every single party she goes to is deviled eggs. So I've taken on that tradition. And if we're ever a guest anywhere, we always bring a plate of deviled eggs.
See, and that's the thing also that I do. So I relate to that because my mom is not with us anymore. And she was the tomato pudding maker. And there's no written recipe for this dish. We just, and I asked my mom, where's the recipe? She said, no, it's a dash of this and a dash of that. And she showed me how to make it. And, and I'm the standard bearer in my family of only one thing, and that is the making of the tomato pudding. And it sounds like you're the deviled egg person in your family.
That's right.
Well, families being such as they are, we have a lot of issues going on in all of our families and social situations. And, some family gatherings are stressful and complex. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Why is that? Is it just, with just any social activity is going to be that way? Or is there something about the holidays and families that makes this even more challenging for some of us and at some occasions?
Well, there's probably a couple different layers to it. This Thanksgiving in particular, people haven't been face to face with some of these guests, maybe in a couple of years. So it would be the first time people are reuniting. Family's more complicated because, unlike social media where there's that sort of veil of anonymity and you might not see anybody again, with family, you're not just saying your feelings, but you also may be touching into some relationship issues or dynamics, people who feel underrepresented or other people who feel controlled or not meeting expectations, and so you have additional layers of maybe disappointment, frustration, guilt that tack on to already subjects that are hot button just in the general public.
Well, Carrie, you already said a mouthful. You got some interest from me right away. Let's talk about the traditional roles in families and how they play out as we get older. So, a very good friend of mine said that she is the baby in her family, and she's got a very big family. I'm the baby in my family, and I got great siblings. They're absolutely incredible. But once you're the baby in the family, I don't care how old you get, how successful you are, whatever you accomplish in your life, you're still, at least from my perspective, I still kind of feel like I'm the baby of the family.
Well, I think it's so funny you mentioned that, and of course, now I am an oldest in my family, and I married an oldest, and both of his parents are oldest, so we have a lot of oldest around our table, and maybe only a few babies. I've got two myself, so we've got one oldest there, and so those things do play out. Of course, everybody has their perspective of who has it harder, which crosses there are to bear. I think at this time of year when we talk about unpleasant feelings and the things that get evoked with the holidays, the two that come to mind are guilt and resentment. So guilt is the feeling that we've done something to, disappoint or hurt or inconvenience someone else, whereas resentment is the feeling that someone's done that to us. And I know you said we'll be having great weather this weekend, which is nice, but I liken guilt and resentment to sort of like driving on a snowy road. We often fishtail from one to the other. So when we feel guilt, we may take on more to try to make ourselves feel better or make us feel like we're meeting someone else's expectations. And once we've taken on too much, we start to feel resentment. We start to compare, say, I'm working harder, I'm doing more, I'm doing more than anybody else is. And then we start to feel resentment, and people tend to go back and forth between those. And it's really hard to just kind of stay straight. I often say, like, driving in the snow, the best thing to do is kind of take your hands off and just wait for the spin to stop.
Well, you do need to relax, and you're right, Carrie Kraweic, therapist from of course I've got it right here, the Birmingham Maple Clinic.
Right.
You've said it so well. There's no question about that, and especially in family and especially these days, we've had COVID, we've had all kinds of special circumstance. We've had some people that feel very strongly about one approach for COVID, and others that feel another way. You may have maskers and non-maskers, vaxxers and non-vaxxers, and these days people tend to dig their heels in pretty deep on these issues, and they can just forget politics. I'll get to that in a minute, but just sitting around with the family, even on some of these things, you can sometimes have people that in the family that have a very different perspective on the way the world works or should works, that is diametrically opposed to your thoughts, and that you shouldn't, but sometimes that can start some conversations that can build.
Absolutely. And so I think one thing, if you're a host this year or if you're attending a family gathering, is to think about, right, there might be topics that feel sort of automatically off limits because they're going to evoke some feelings in other people. But often some of them are really subtle and you may not know what you're tapping into. So, first, probably plan ahead with some topics that you feel comfortable. Maybe what shows you've watched this year, if there's someone that you think might benefit from a series you've seen or a book you've read, to try to start to evoke some conversations and have them like landing pads, safe places where you can go in the event something goes strange, to bring things back to a lighter place. But you never really know. And I think, also as a host or a guest, you really have to think you cannot make rules for other people, that you really just need to focus on the rules you can make for yourself, because again, like with resentment, if you try to make rules for other people and they push back, you're all going to end up upset. But make some rules for yourself. If there's a topic you don't like or you want to stay away from, then truly stay away from it and honor the boundaries you've set. And if you need to excuse yourself to take a walk outside or maybe bring up a game or something light, if something's going in a direction you don't feel comfortable, you be the leader to invite another opportunity. Instead of saying stop or I don't want to hear this or something kind of more aggressive, come up with a gentle way to either excuse and take care of yourself or invite others to join you to do something else.
Well, and one thing, and I grew up around a family of really beautiful people, and my parents and all of my parents' friends were just so nourishing and great, lovely, wonderful people. But we still had a couple of things here and there to deal with. That said, one of the ways that they always started out a conversation, especially when the adults were talking to the kids, they asked us questions. They asked about what's going on in our lives. They really, truly wanted to know. But it's always a good default position, isn't it? Get people to start talking, and that will relieve a lot of opportunity for conflict.
Absolutely. I think that curiosity and compassion are our two best friends when it comes to relationships. And even if there is someone who has a different point of view than you, or someone you'd like to perhaps learn a little bit about their perspective, if it comes up on Thanksgiving Day or during the holidays, perhaps invite them not at that moment to discuss it, but at a different setting. Let's get together over coffee in 2 weeks. I'd love to hear how you grew to learn this state of mind, or what things inform you, not with the emphasis on trying to change them, but really, like you said, coming from questions, like I said, curiosity, and compassion are really a kind way to get to know someone and get to know someone now, if it's someone you haven't seen for many years, and just develop intimacy and a bond rather than trying to change a position or force a method of or a preference. Those are not kind.
Yeah, you're not going to convince your brother or your sister or your in-laws, if you're a Democrat and they're a Republican. You're not going to change their political views on Thursday. So you make a really, really good point. So let me just ask you, maybe you can give us a tool here, Carrie. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. So somebody says something to you that you're diametrically opposed to. It goes to your very soul. You totally disagree with them. You got that magic line that you can bring out of your hip pocket, so you could say something, get yourself out of the situation, and not look like a total puss either at the same time. What do you do with that?
Right. So, I think preparation over panic. So, first, think ahead. Is there a certain amount of time that you're sort of good for, like,
Right.
if so show up early and maybe leave early or have a reason, have maybe another party to hop off to, kind of know your limits and know, okay, like after a certain amount of time or a certain number of grading comments, I'm really not going to be able to hold it together, and plan ahead for that. So know when to excuse yourself, know when to excuse your family, have perhaps a code word, with your spouse or significant other, so that when it's time to go, you can sort of subtly, like, kind of like wink and nod and like, hey, we're getting out of here without much of a fuss. So plan ahead first, of course, plan ahead your own rest the night before, drinking water throughout the day, getting some exercise and some time outdoors, certainly avoiding an abundance of alcohol. Those are things that are all going to help you. So preparation over panic there. In the moment, I think it's exactly that. If you're noticing a change in your body, certainly your temperature, flushed face, tense hands, clenched mouth, any sign that you're not relaxed, it's probably a time to excuse yourself and get calm, even if you need to say something or address that person. To wait until you've calmed slightly. Doing it in that hot moment when your fists are tight, your shoulders are tight, your mouth is tight, is only going to inflame the situation more.
All right. Well, I advise that if you have family that are Buffalo Bills fans, don't go to their house. Just don't go. And then you can watch. They go somewhere else. Then then you can watch the football game. You got 4 hours, and this year the Lions are going to be really good, regardless of what happens. Having that sports moment. It sounds crazy, but it really does create some really nice bonding to have something like a game on television to watch that can occupy some of the conversation and give everybody a common thread. And there's probably other things, other tools that we can introduce to the festivities like that get the focus off of, are you a Trump person or a Biden person, and get it on something else.
Well, I think absolutely. And I think with the spirit of curiosity, now certain families are different in their degree of openness, and maybe perhaps some are a little too much, too open, overshare, whereas some are so quiet. But there's so much to be gained by, like you said, even learning where did this recipe come from and why did it get introduced on Thanksgiving? Or what were your mother's, father's, grandparents' recipes? Going back in time can help create that thread. So even when there's division now, what are the things that we're connected by, right? So we're connected by tradition, we're connected by rules. Why do we watch the game, or why do we serve dinner at 11 and other families serve it at 4 on Thanksgiving? How did these things come to be? If you can come not from a judgmental place, but really just a genuine curiosity, you may learn something that helps make something else make sense. Even in these political times, we say, I just don't know how someone could feel that way. And you say, well, it turns out their family were business owners or in real estate. They say, oh, well, then maybe that makes sense that they're aligned to this perspective over something else, or, one way or the other. So, it might seem like you just can't understand someone. Go back in time and try to find where there's some connection. You might learn something that connects you more than you had thought.
And our tradition and our culture has changed certainly. I think we become, as a society here in the United States, just a little bit more aggressive than maybe we were a generation or two or three ago. But I know in my family that, my parents and my grandparents, they'd have their little disputes. So this is nothing new that is exclusive to our generation. Just just follow the leadership of Miss Manners, right? Just try to be nice and polite. And I think, I don't know, you're the expert, but I just think if you just make a little effort and you're conscious about not wanting to get everybody aggravated, and you try to be nice, you probably have a better time.
Absolutely. I think, like, you're right. I mean, society has changed, and in some ways, with every benefit comes a consequence of anything. And so, where we have many advances in technology and even advances in point of views, that also comes with a downside. And so, just keeping that in mind, in many ways, like you said, we're more permissive, we're more accepting of a variety of different social, scenarios. But the downside of that is we're also exposed to a lot more that's perhaps different than what we've known. And it takes a lot of work and effort to be accepting and tolerant, in addition to also feeling like there's also a space for yourself and your identity. So everyone's kind of like vying for position. But if instead you can see, well, the real benefit here is that we've allowed ourselves to be exposed to so much more. And like you said, that being said, we've maybe permit things that we wouldn't allow before. There was generations before where you would never share who you voted for, and
Right.
that was completely private. And now we share everything, and maybe in ways we share too much, and there would be okay to return to say, hey, some of these informations are private and meant to be kept within a household or just in a person's own heart.
Carrie Kraweic, thank you very much for joining us from the Birmingham Maple Clinic. I see your URL was on the your website information was on the screen here a moment or two ago, and it's back there right now. You want to take an opportunity and tell people about your organization and how they can access your services.
So Birmingham Maple Clinic is a outpatient therapy practice that's been in the community for over 30 years. There's 30 therapists, probably 4 or 5 psychiatrists, and a staff of people that help with billing and insurance to make it all very clear and easy. So we have therapists that span a range of issues from ADHD to eating disorders, to family issues, loss, depression, anxiety, pretty much you name the mental health concern. We have somebody at our clinic trained as an expert in that field or discipline.
All right, Carrie. Well, thank you for joining us and taking time to join us on the Megacast. A very important subject as we head into the next couple of days with a lot of family. Good to be with you, and I can't wait to try. It was your deviled eggs, right? And I'll say I'll
That's
save a
right.
little. I'll save a little bowl of tomato pudding for you. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Have a nice Thanksgiving. Thank you for having me.
You too.